Planning 101. I'll say it again now that the recording started. Today we're talking about Strategic Planning 101. So it's really going to be sort of the grounding philosophy for strategic planning to be done well. For those of you, it looks like everyone I can see is a California person. This is going to be really closely aligned to the way we think about the LCAP or the SPSA. So just have those things in mind. Those are just the working functional names of strategic plans within California. So my name is Ryan Royer, and I have had probably 8 different titles since I worked at Parsec over the last 3 years, just constantly on the move. But right now, I am the technical solutions specialist here at Parsec. But I also have Robert Rodriguez on the call with me, and he's usually in the background just pulling strings. I'm just his puppet. But Robert, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Robert Rodriguez. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Parsec Education. I'm kind of the one helping, like Ryan said, behind the scenes with these virtual events and also the in-person events. But pleasure to be here with all you guys.
Right. So we have 3 objectives today, guys. We keep our objectives really simple because we don't have a lot of time, and there's a million different ways we could go with the information. So today our goals are to learn something new, like at least one thing. If it's 2 or 3, then I've knocked it out of the park, but at least one. And then make a friend. And if that friend is just me, that's okay. We can hang out virtually or in person if you come to our summit. Would love to have you guys here. But we also, and this is really, really important, is the hardest part of the work. And it's the last objective, is to apply this thinking to our work. So what shall we do now? What do we do now that we have this information? Because we can talk philosophy all day long. If it doesn't make it into what we do, then it doesn't make a difference. All right. So we'll start off with a question, which is what are the biggest challenges your organization faces in implementing a strategic plan? And you can write your answers in the chat. There's only a few of us here, so if you'd like to just come off mute and share, that's totally a viable option. But question is, what are the biggest challenges your organization faces in implementing a strategic plan? We'll just take a few minutes or about a minute here to think and respond in the chat, or you can come off mute and say out loud. All right, we got a quiet group today. So when I think about this question, what are the biggest challenges you face in implementing a strategic plan? It could be implementing what's in your LCAP, implementing what's in your SPSA, Paul, implementing what was established in your initial charter petition with your authorizer. But what would you guys say? Would you say that like fidelity of implementation, like actually monitoring that we did the work, is a hard thing? Oh, we got some answers. Woohoo. Focusing
Yeah,
on a
Ryan,
single thing.
this is Paul again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I know from talking to other colleagues at different conferences and whatnot, it's like you have your big strategic plan, your LCAP, your SPSA, whatever, at the beginning of the year, and then it's just a matter of managing it, tracking it, following up in coordination with all of the other things everybody else is doing. So
Yeah.
when there's, I think we always start the summer with this, like this year is going to be different because we have better goals, we have better ways to manage it, but then the year starts and things get crazy and it doesn't always go as you'd hope. So that's the challenge of being a fully remote school, and you can't just walk into somebody's office or at least we are, but
Yeah,
you don't, all team meetings are virtual, and so we've gotten a lot better at it, and using Parsec tools obviously help, but really just kind of streamlining the goals and the tasks associated to each department, each person, is sometimes a challenge.
Yeah. I think that that's not just a remote system, Paul. It's like everywhere, keeping the work prioritized and central as we continue to do all the little things that will kind of push themselves in is probably the thing that gets all strategic plans off track. Because especially in education, it's like you have a plan at the beginning of the year. This year's going to be different, and then you'll get distracted by the 100 different fires that you have to put out every week. And keeping the central work central is a difficult task. And Barbara said it, getting everyone on board, keeping people aligned, getting them aligned is a difficult task. So thank you for sharing. So here's some reasons why it matters, just real quick. Man, Zoom is like my enemy right now. All right, aligning goals with student success, data-driven decision-making, accountability and compliance, stakeholder engagement, or in California, we say educational partner in education. I can't remember the right term. And then continuous improvement. All of those things matter. If we get dispersed and we don't keep the work prioritized and central that we've agreed to keep prioritized and central, we won't know what's working and what's not working. And all of these things will begin to suffer. Here's some statistics for you guys. 87% of districts attribute improved student outcomes to effective strategic planning. Schools with clear strategic goals are 50% more likely to meet their LCAP objectives. And schools using data-driven planning tools report a 40% improvement in decision-making efficiency. And so if you think about having a good strategic plan and keeping it central, it is the foundational piece that will be, all those other blocks will begin to kind of fall into place like it's Tetris. And so we have to be good, get good at keeping the main thing and wrangling in as everyone has their own priorities and objectives. This is what we agreed to, the accountability component. So question number 2,
Ryan's having the same issues I'm
gotten
having.
in the way.
Yeah.
Did he freeze on your guys' end, or is that my connection?
No, Ryan, you freeze a little bit. Can you?
Am I back?
Sorry.
You're back.
Yeah, you're
yeah.
back.
I
Sorry,
have to
guys.
kill my video too because there's a bandwidth issues, I think. But
Yeah,
you froze, Ryan. Sorry.
We are exponentially growing, and our Wi-Fi hasn't kept up with all the people in the office. So my apologies. So what are some of the biggest challenges with tracking and reporting? You've got everyone on board, Margaret or Barbara. You have got you've got people aligned, but now where do things get lost? Why do we have a big plan at the end of the year and then we don't see the fruit of it at the end? All right. So I think, revisiting LCAP more than just during the mid-year update. Yes. The focus of keeping the LCAP should be your strategic planning document. Thank you, Paul. It should be the thing that all of your continuous improvement work goes around. And for those of you who are charters, it should outline the continuous improvement work you're going to do. It should stay central, and then your renewal, and then your next LCAP, and all of those things that are so tedious actually become byproducts of the centralized efforts around your LCAP and your strategic plan. If you update that work regularly, if you stay faithful to it, the other things begin to flow out of that work. They become less tedious one-offs that then end up getting pushed to the side, and we'll revisit that at the end of the year when we have the lagging metrics. Yeah, and Barbara, I like that. You said we see fruit at the end of the year, but keeping all the ducks in the row, and that kind of makes it hard sometimes to know what's the reason we had improvement, right? There's a story that Babatunde tells about NWEA at Madera Unified, and they read this study out of Long Beach Unified, where they did a Khan Academy integration with NWEA, and the students who did that Khan Academy integration saw significant improvement on the state test as comparison to their counterparts in the school system that did not have that connection. And so they implemented it at Madera Unified and saw zero correlation at the end of the year. And when they actually went back and looked at what happened, they saw that when Khan Academy was supposed to be implemented in the classrooms, teachers were in the corner grading and students were on their phones, but Khan Academy was up on their screen. And so it turns out they had been measuring for success correlation time spent in Khan Academy, and it was the wrong metric. So they didn't even know how it was being implemented in the school system. And rather than throwing out Khan Academy, they actually revisited the way they measured it and the way that they measured fidelity. And they saw that correlation of improvement that they were looking for. So that kind of stuff is hard to keep track of. And when it's all said and done, we moved on to the next thing. It's hard to go back and investigate, but those are important pieces. And so I'm just going to do a quick introduction to this thing that we have built called Clarity, but it's really the philosophy that's become Clarity that is the most important. And this is something that's in beta with a few schools right now, school systems, Fresno Unified being one of them, some other schools that are using this. And it is a platform that is built to help us keep the central work, help us keep the things that we said we're going to do in front of us and stay accountable to that. And the problem tends to be that districts struggle with consistency in assessing actions. They tend to have a hard time keeping it central. It comes out, the LCAP's the strategic plan. It comes out in the mid-year update. It comes out at the end of the year for the programmatic review and any alterations. And that's it. And what we're trying to do here is keep that work central so that, you know, Barbara, to your point, I've followed all of the things through the year and I know what worked and what didn't. And Paul, to your point, we've revisited. And so, you know, we will have the ability to monitor and measure the implementation, alignment, and effectiveness of actions to make informed instructional and budgetary decisions. We want to make sure that the things that we said we did well, and that we actually know if that had an impact. Because otherwise we go, I'm implementing this new math curriculum, this new ELA curriculum. I expect to see a 10-point gain in DFS on my state test, and then we just wait. And we could tell you that, hey, we actually saw that 10-point gain, but I don't know for certain if it's because of the thing that I implemented, because I didn't track in between. And so it's actually an erroneous correlation until you know that there's a legitimate connection. And we want to use this to foster what we call within Parsec an Ubuntu culture. I am because we are. We all play a part in this, and we're better off when everyone is at their best, right? And we help each other be at our best. So there's two types of kind of approaches, or two things that we typically see when it comes to strategic planning. Most people spend their time at above the surface. They do end of the year reviews, they do complete versus incomplete, and then they use state level data to monitor their effectiveness. And these things are what was the baseline of the LCAP when it started, which is our state strategic plan, again, for anyone who might not be from within our state. It's the state strategic plan that every district and charter school has to do. Now, what we really want to get to is the below the surface stuff. Yes, I spent this much money, but did it have an impact? Yes, I completed this, or it was incomplete, but did I actually make a difference? You know, did I get feedback that told me that what I did actually connected to what I was trying to do with the people that it was done for? And then effectiveness, it's like, why? What did I do? What happened and why did it happen? Like, I can tell you that I had this score on the state test, but do I know why? These are the differences that will actually help us understand our system and take us from a system that maybe is getting lucky with high results to a system that's leading because we know how to replicate them. And I really like this next slide. It's really two different types of accountability. There's a results-based accountability that is like distance from standard, and a performance-based accountability. And we have to make the switch to doing more performance-based accountability in the work that we do. And you guys have probably noticed the LCAP started out being very small, very simple, but then it is now like, I think I was looking at one school system, they started out with like a 40-page LCAP, and now it's like a 160-page LCAP over time. And a lot of what they're trying to do is they're trying to force in this performance level accountability with the review of your actions. You have to tell about the effectiveness, what you did, all of these pieces. Problem is, we're usually filling that in at the end of the year without the information in between, except for maybe the mid-year update, which, by the way, if you're interested, there's a mid-year update template that we created on our website that you can find under resources. It'll be helpful for probably years to come, that just fits all of the requirements. It'll be good to help in this process, but we want to spend more time thinking about the following things. You look at them under performance accountability. How much did we do? Right? Example, 250 students were placed in a Read 180 elective and completed course. How well did we do it? This is a really big one. I need to know how well we did it. Yes, we bought all of these computers, but we actually never handed them out because we couldn't figure out how to do that. I've seen that happen. Can't do that. So how well did we do it? Example, students are sharing they enjoy the platform. 90% of the students completed module assessments and teacher evaluation was exceeded. So these are 3 ways that we begin to understand that we actually implemented with fidelity. And then were students impacted as a result? What was the actual outcome of that? To date, students in Read 180 are seeing 25% improvements in MAP scores. That's an NWEA platform that we're talking about. And EL students are seeing 2% gains. So that is actually the kind of strategic planning flow that we want to be able to identify to begin to be moving from a compliance based to results accountability based to a performance accountability, really understanding the why behind our system. So in Clarity, we've kind of built that in. So there's a place to build in each of your each of your goals that are in the LCAP. There's a tracking of the financial updates. You can actually add financial updates and what the money was spent on. It's in there. You can assign things to folks. So you can add actions, right? These are the actions that we need to do to move this. So in the LCAP, it's very clear. This is the action we said, this is the action said. We can assign it and we can determine if it's on track and set milestones, which we call subtasks. And then all of that's tied to metrics. So if I have these 4 actions tied to this metric and I did all of those with fidelity, they're all on track, they're all completed by the end of the year, and my metric went down, that actually helps me do some good investigation. And so this is a platform built around keeping that kind of work central and having something that we all can look at. Not everyone's going to pull out the LCAP, and we haven't all made our updates in the LCAP. And so this is a living LCAP, living strategic plan that allows us to work more effectively. The living part, I think, speaks to what Barbara and Paul, you were both saying. And then we have the, this is insight and action. So with the goal, with the metrics, who's it's assigned to, is it on track? What's the priority? What's the due date? All of those things. Now, this is not a project management tool. You're not going to put every little thing that you do that builds up to something. You're going to keep this as the priority level items and the main driving factor. So here's our goal, here's an action, and here's the main driving components of that action. So that keeps the work the main thing. If we made it a project management tool in the sense of like an Asana or a Trello or something, it would have gotten out of hand. You don't want to get that detailed. You just need a document that everyone can look at, everyone can understand who's doing what, what's been done. And then of course you have your budget information with updates, etc. And this allows us to keep a running history of updates. And you can see the running history of updates here. At this point, this happened. At this point, this happened. All built within the system. And if we do work around a cohesive system, that's really going to keep us on track. And it doesn't have to be Clarity. It can be an Asana. It could be a Trello, whatever you guys end up using. But treating it like it is a centralized location to do the work that we say we're going to do and having accountability around that is huge. Setting due dates, being active about that. So let's talk about goal analysis, because at the end of it all, an effective strategic plan will do an effective goal analysis. That's why it's required in, or things like it are required in the LCAP. And there's some things that make it difficult. So we know that numbers alone are insufficient to understand what accounts for your results. That change in DFS, that change in chronic absenteeism doesn't explain your results. It just explains it just gives you a summary of work over time. It doesn't mean you know how you got there. And it is difficult to connect the story to the numbers, right? So that work that's done throughout the year. And monitoring the implementation and effectiveness of actions throughout the year is also super hard to do. So here's what we recommend. using quantitative and qualitative to measure the fidelity of implementation. We talk a lot about quantitative data when we talk about strategic plans. What is the easy to calculate metric that lets me know that I'm on track? What qualitative unlocks, and thank God for new technologies that are coming out that makes this more possible than ever. But what these things make possible is the ability to get feedback much more quickly from teachers, from students, from parents. And I think it's really cool to think about, and we'll have some more examples later on down the line, but let's say I have a professional development around this new ELA platform that I've gotten in. And I then say, okay, now I'm going to wait to see what the results are at the end of the year. That's not going to work. We've already established that. You guys don't do that. But what if I take the time and I can actually say, what additional resources do you need? How comfortable do you feel implementing this now in your classroom? I think a lot of times we assume that professional development is complete, but we haven't asked the teachers if they're ready to implement what they learned or what additional things they might need in order to implement this well. And we don't have a plan to track their implementation. Qualitative data gives us the ability to do that in a new way. What does that look like? So there are two sort of methods of what's the word I'm looking for? Of inquiry when it comes to using quantitative and qualitative. There's explanatory and exploratory. One starts with the quantitative and leads to the qualitative. One starts with the qualitative and leads to the quantitative. They're both valid, but I just wanted to leave this here so you guys have it as like a framework for thinking through how you might go. You might go, here's my state test results, why? Or you might say, I'm going to ask students and teachers what resources they need just out of the blue and track that back to a more quantitative metric. Both of those are valid. But let's talk about this tool that we built that is sort of built around the explanatory model. We built a tool, you guys can use it. It's called Unlocking LCAP Insights. And what it does, you enter your name and email, and then we'll email you the results because it takes a little minute for the large language model to run it. But you put in an action title and an action description. And what it does for that action is it actually rewrites it through like, I need parents to be able to understand this kind of lens. And then it produces qualitative data. Now, why qualitative data? Because I don't have metrics a week out necessarily that are quantitative, but I can get feedback. I don't have metrics that tell me sentiment. I don't have metrics that tell me any number of intangible things that are meaningful to implementation and effectiveness. And so what this tool does is it actually produces the kind of questions that you would want to ask teachers and students. And then it gives you the kind of results that you would want to see to identify things have been, it gives you two, but with faithfulness. So it pops out, how do I monitor faithfulness or fidelity of implementation? And how do I do that from a teacher and a student lens? And then what does that look like if I was highly effective, moderately effective, or not very effective? And then it also will do it for not just fidelity of implementation, but effectiveness, right? What does effectiveness actually look like in the qualitative to help you get a view? And you can take that and you can put it into ChatGPT. We have Parsec Real that helps with that. And it really begins to help you understand the status on the ground while you're waiting for some of those more lagging metrics. And it's really important. You can't do this for everything, but we'll get there. So you have your goal, have your results that you've tied that to, you've had your actions, but really the part that's missing, and they're trying to kind of shoehorn it into the LCAP, is that implementation. And we recommend that you use qualitative data to help yourself understand the implementation effectiveness. And that's why our tool will produce those kind of questions for you. And you can use that, you can do it with Google Forms, you can do it with Parsec Real, you can do it with any number, SurveyMonkey, all of those things, and then run it through like a ChatGPT. Just make sure you're moving any PII, and those things will then begin to become more evident to you, right? And I can help you with that process, but that's separate from what this is. So there's a little information here on why qualitative matters with your LCAP goals. You need to be able to explain why you're off target or on target. Like that's the most important thing because it has to be replicatable. But let's look at a scenario. If you want to report on hypothetical goal 2, improving student achievement, your goal was to increase the number of Black, Hispanic, and SED students enrolling in AP courses by 20%. Your mid-year update shows that there was a 2% decrease in enrollment rates for these student groups. You need to know why. So if you use Parsec Real or some other survey platform, we highly recommend Real because the response rates are better. But share your experience in choosing to take or not take an AP course this year is a question you would position. What is one thing the school could have done to support your decision-making process? That would have helped. And what is one thing that might persuade you to take an AP course next year? And so this is the way that you can begin to do, this is what's the explanatory method. You have your metric and now exploratory. You have your method, now we're exploring. And so this is going to be really important. Again, I use that term out, really important. This is going to help you identify what the blockers were and how to change the metrics. This is really, really key in reporting on the LCAP moving forward when you have to show, was it effective or was it not, and why? We want to be authentic with that. Technology is making that possible. Here's the caveat. Should I collect qualitative data on all metrics? The answer for that is no. Prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. Qualitative takes work no matter what. So find your most important objective, do that as a team, and then collect qualitative on that. You've determined this thing will make the most impact. Let's find out if it does, and let's know very, very clearly what we did well and what we didn't. And then here's some example of what feedback can look like as you report it in the mid-year update, or different ways that you can report it, getting more of a mix of the qualitative and quantitative. We will share this presentation with you so you can have this. We're running out of time. So we covered a lot. And I think the summary of it all is you have to take the quantitative and connect it with the qualitative. And you do that, you just keep the work central. So you need a way to keep the work central. And there's platforms that'll help you do the project managers. And we have Clarity they'll be releasing in the near future that'll help you do that. Then you have to take the quantitative and connect it with the qualitative so you know why and what you did. And then there's just everything else was just a bunch of examples and details on that. So with that said, do you guys have any questions? Because there was a lot.
None from me.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brian.
Paul. Yeah. Appreciate you coming through. And Robert put the Unlock LCAP Insights tool in the chat because he's the man.
When did you say the LCAP
Clarity?
goal track? Yeah, Clarity is available? Or did
Yeah. So our aim for release for everyone is in July right now. And we're making a lot of iterations on it. It actually has Real built into it, Paul, so that you can like build in that sort of effectiveness and fidelity monitoring into the system through Real, so that it's seamless. Because otherwise, it's a really hard task because it's not the way we typically think. But yeah, that'll be available in July.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any questions from Barbara or Nick or anyone else who was on the call? Or Robert?
I don't have any questions, Ryan, but thanks so much for presenting this. It was really awesome.
Awesome. Appreciate you. Yeah, we'll get this out to you because there's a lot of content in here I wasn't able to cover for time. But I think there's some important things for you guys to at least read through and consider the way that it works, the way it connects. Yep. All right, guys. That's it for us. So you are dismissed. If you need anything, I think maybe I have another slide. Oh, yeah, you can give us your feedback. If there's a way that we could have improved, you can use this QR code and it will give you access to Parsec Real. So you can test it out. That's pretty cool. See how it works and just let us know. The only way that we improve is by you guys giving us feedback and letting us know, like, without being stuck to like a 1 through 5. Cool.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep. And that's it. Have a great day, everybody. Appreciate you.